Nonverbal communication, just as its name suggests, refers to information communicated without using words. People may not be aware that they are sending nonverbal messages because 93% of communication is nonverbal, with 55% sent through facial expressions, postures, and gestures, and 38% through tone of voice. Therefore, it is essential to understand how it works and how you can communicate better when you use it. There are varieties of nonverbal communication. However, in this video, only one element of object language, clothing and its roles in intercultural communication, will be introduced to you. Now, let's look at some definitions of object language before coming to the main discussion part. Object language, which according to Dr. Wood in his book, Nonverbal Communication, Everyday Encounters, is personal objects we use to announce our identities and heritage and to personalize our environments. Additionally, in the book Intercultural Competence, Interpersonal Communication Across Cultures of Lustig and Coester, object language is also called the artifactual code system, which include the creations that people make, use, or wear. For example, clothing styles, cosmetics, jewelry, and accessories, or the way we decorate our house or working space. Based on these artifactual codes, we make enormous assumptions about people's surrounding, and in turn, they also influence what people think of you and how they react to you. So, what are the roles of clothing in communication? Generally, clothing projects messages. By choosing a particular piece of clothes, people commit themselves to the statements it makes. Basically, there are four main functions of clothing in communication. Firstly, it defines who you are. Your style of clothing can tell part of your character. As Spindler states in his article, clothes we select for ourselves are a better indicator of who we think we are than our faces or our bodies. They can be a mirror of what's inside or a veneer of camouflage against the world that judges quickly on surfaces, or a map to display your aspirations. For example, a formally dressed professor like this is often assumed as a prepared, knowledgeable, and organized person, whereas an informally dressed teacher is mostly believed as a friendly, fair, enthusiastic, and flexible person. Secondly, your social status, like your wealth or your occupations, can be shown by the type of clothing you choose or the amount of money you spend on it. When looking at people like these boys who wear clothes of luxury brands, we tend to guess that they come from a rich family or belong to the high society. While looking at the girl, we think that she probably comes from an average income family. Or looking at these two men dressing neatly like this, we probably think that they are office workers, while the woman wearing comfortable, casual clothes may suggest that she works as a freelancer or does something related to art and music. Thirdly, clothing can express our attitudes, moods, or emotions. For instance, wearing formal clothes to a job interview shows our sincerity and seriousness. Conversely, if people dress too comfortably to interviews like this, it is highly likely that they will be viewed as a candidate with unprofessional and insincere attitude. Last but not least, clothing artifact communicates the relationships between people. When we are with our friends or family, we are free to wear what we want. We can put on shorts, skirts, or colorful tops. But when we meet people of higher positions than us, for example our boss, or meeting business counterparts, we often dress quite conservatively to show our respect and politeness, such as a white shirt, a business suit, or a trouser suit.
Regarding the roles of clothing in intercultural communication, it serves as a cultural display because it reflects our culture and subcultural affiliations. Clothing can initially reflect cultural heritage. Ethnic dress is worn by members of one group, distinguishing themselves through differentiation in terms of the items, ensembles, and body modifications that speak of an individual past. Through the adaptation of traditional items, we speak of cultural heritage. In countries which have vast spectrum of ethnicity and religions like India, there is a variety of ethnic dresses. In this picture, we can see Hindu women wearing saris or salwars, the national dress of India, coexisting with Muslim women, strongly portraying their religious identity through the burqa, the religious dress for Muslim women, ethnic dress for certain castes of Muslim women, and national dress for women in theocratic Islamic countries like Saudi Arabia. Muslim women are expected to conceal all bodily parts when in a social environment, and their religious identity can be immediately perceived through their style dress. Clothing can also reflect subculture and subgroup identity. The fact that people do not share the same styles, cultures, and ideologies gives rise to the birth of subcultures like the teddy boys, mod and punks, who are easily identifiable by the way they dressed and behaved socially. These subcultural groups express a form of collective identity from which an individual can be distinguished when outside that group. One of the most important and controversial subcultures when looking at fashion and identity is punk from 1970s Britain. Punks borrow items from everyday life and incorporated it within their overall dress, recontextualizing them to communicate new meanings. As described by Parker in 2000, the creativity and cultural response of the punk and other subculture groups were not merely random but expressive of the social contradictions and overall scenario of the time. Punks not only communicated by sheer joblessness, poverty, and changing moral standards, but dramatized it through their severe enables that incorporated chains, safety pins, beanliners, dyed hair, iconography of sexual fetishisms, and so on. These items and anti-fashion ideology adapted clearly communicated the anger and frustration felt by these youth. In Vietnam, hip hop artists are one of the subcultures that are popular these days. Conversions, beanie caps, graffiti, and breaking dancing are all elements of today's hip hop scenes in Vietnam. Hip hop emerged in Vietnam around 10 years ago, but it has started to influence the clothing style of Vietnamese youth. We can see a lot of teenagers on the street wearing snapback or sneakers, though this does not necessarily indicate that they are hip hop lovers. Clothing appears to be the first contact we have when we communicate with people, either of the same or different culture. It definitely does provide one of the most ready means through which individuals can make impressive visual statements about their identities. Each person is unique in some way or the other. We feel the need to express this and thereby find and feel a sense of belonging. Clothing is one of the biggest factors aiding this process and can be seen as a celebration of individualism.
In the next part, our group will answer the question: why effective intercultural communicators need to understand cultural differences? In our view, there are obviously three explanations for this. Firstly, cultural differences may affect the choice of mediums used to communicate in intercultural contexts. For example, high-context cultures such as Latin American, African, or Asian leave much of message understood through context or nonverbal cues. They're looking for meaning and understanding in what is not said, in body language, in silences and pauses, and in the relationship. Therefore, the parent, for example, still relies more on face-to-face communications than on the written mode. By contrast, low-context cultures in most of Germanic or English-speaking countries expect messages to be explicit, specific, and precise. Some people from United States, Canada, the UK, or Germany emphasize written messages over oral or face-to-face communications. So from this analysis, we can reach a conclusion that understanding cultural differences can help two people from two different nations to choose the right medium which facilitates the communication between them. A further certification is that understanding and appreciating cultural differences avoids causing offense, insensitivity, or misunderstanding, and also maintains the harmonious environment between intercultural communicators. An example mentioned by Hofstede shows that when negotiating in Western countries such as the United States, once there is a mutual understanding between the two parties and a satisfactory conclusion has been reached, the cultural side of the end of the negotiations would be to shake hands. In Middle Eastern countries, however, a handshake is the cultural sign that serious negotiations are the beginning. It means that the understanding of differences between your own culture and an unfamiliar partner can make or break a business deal. So, in conclusion, in order to avoid undesirable disregard or misunderstanding and make the communication smooth and successful, understanding cultural differences is a must-do. Finally, having knowledge of cultural differences helps intercultural communicators avoid the instant negative judgment that may provoke irritation or anger. As we may know, cultural barriers are greater than language barriers, and they frequently provoke reactions that are both negative and emotional. What is considered behavior in one country may be rude in another. What is a sensitive issue to one culture to another may not be a point of any consequence. Normally, we tend to negatively evaluate any behavior that differs from our own. To use a common expression, we take offense. However, we can consciously choose not to take offense by learning cultural differences. Once we understand the cultural differences, we will know that offending behavior may be proper in its own place, and therefore being alert for any negative reaction to a person or situation that we experience when engaging in intercultural communications.
In the final part, our group will propose some recommendations to boost the adaptation in the intercultural context, and we'll use the details in the film outsource to exemplify our suggestions. Initially, people should prepare and learn about other cultures, especially before entering a new country. In outsource, because Todd doesn't prepare anything and has no knowledge about Indian people and culture, he overcomes cultural shock and feels it difficult to adjust to a new environment. Therefore, we can see that if we provide ourselves with some basic and essential knowledge of other cultures, we will feel more ready and comfortable to integrate in a new country. Secondly, It is advisable for people to become aware of the cultural differences and eventually start to accept and respect them. In our source, initially Todd realized the differences between American and Indian cultures, but he is not willing to accept Indian culture. It is not until the meeting with a compatriot at McDonald's that Todd determines to open his mind and accept the differences in Indian culture. He also begins making some transformation in terms of adjustment to Indian culture. One of his changes is that Todd takes part in the color festival together with the local people and has fun. He even imitates the native Indian to submerge himself in the village lake that before he viewed as a very dirty and polluted place. From this point, the adjustment process of Todd occurs more quickly and easily. At the end of the movie, we can see that Todd totally integrates himself in the Indian society, and his characteristic and attitude even are influenced by Indian culture. Last but not least, an effective way to adapt to an intercultural context more quickly is to keep ethnocentrism at an appropriate level. In Todd's case, he comes from an individual society where individual privacy is highly respected, whereas India is a collectivist country, so the concerns to others' life, share and help others in difficulty. Therefore, Todd seems to hold the feelings of dislike for the Indian. He also acts in an ethnocentric manner when working and communicating with his Indian employees by saying, basically, you people need to learn about America. It is ethnocentrism that creates difficulties when Todd joins conversation with the Indian people. And when he reduces his ethnocentrism, it becomes easier for him to get well in Indian culture and communicate effectively with Indian people.
So here is the list of our references. And this is also the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching.